Hi everyone, Slattany Slattano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Roddy Ricch album. Please excuse me for being Antisocial. This is the debut album of Compton singer, songwriter, rapper, Mr. Roddy Ricch, a record that came out at the very end of last year in December. It fell through the cracks for me a little bit as the end of my year was focused on catching up with some records I was looking at for a good part of the year, also list week. But for Roddy, this actually ended up being a perfect time to drop this album. With little competition and lots of streams, the record shot right up to #1 on the Billboard charts and then returned to that spot again a few weeks later, which was due in part to the album's last single, The Box, snowballing into the #1 song in the country. So this thing miraculously turned out to be a last-minute stunner during a time in the industry where most of the focus is on end-of-year coverage, Grammy season around the corner. I also didn't go into this thing expecting a whole lot considering how middle-of-the-road Roddy's performances were in the cyphers and the freestyles from this past XXL freshman class. And I will admit, on the surface and in concept, this record might not seem like much. Roddy is essentially another auto-crooner, a disciple of Young Thug and Future, both of whom he borrows some inflections from pretty heavily across this record. So you could say he's one more drop in the bucket of countless rappers competing in the same exact lane, sure, but he is actually pulling into the lead here and doing it by bringing more focus and talent to the table. For one, it is refreshing to hear a record in this style with a series of songs that don't just sound like streaming fodder, don't just sound like wash, rinse, repeat, don't just sound like you spent maybe 20 minutes on each of these tracks, which not only shows in so many of the choruses on this thing being so damn sharp, but also in the storytelling, in the more introspective musings you might catch on a track like Prayers to the Trap God, or the mega cinematic closer, War Baby, which beautifully and tragically tops the record off with these amazing string sections, choral vocals. A lot of the same thematic qualities carry over onto the intro cut here too. The glamorous pianos, the airy synth strings, all of the lyrics referencing these traumatic brushes with death, promethazine in his eyes, crying purple tears, and once the beat drops, damn! But it's really Roddy's expressive and dynamic voice that makes this track and so many others here too. The flow on this track is solid. He is constantly making little melodic embellishments to it as well as the song progresses. His range is pretty good, and the auto-tune proves to be more of an effect than it is a crutch, which is especially true of The Box, the #1 single I mentioned earlier where Roddy gives a particularly elastic vocal performance. Pour up the whole damn seal, I'ma get lazy, which is just one of maybe half a dozen super sticky vocal lines all over this track. It's one thing to have a unique or a good voice and hop on any instrumental and just riff and maybe some good ideas come out in the process. And then it's another thing to have a great voice and boil your best ideas down into a clear and a sharp song, which is what Roddy is doing. There's also that unique little sample in the instrumental that so many people who are fans of the track have pointed out, which I understand is just a recording of Roddy's voice repeated over and over and over. And it's this small, funny thing, but ends up adding so much to the track. And it's very stern string samples, it's dreary synthesizers. The ending of this album and the start of it are both relatively strong. It's the middle that is a little hit or miss. And when I say hit or miss, I mean there are some tracks that are just so-so in comparison with others. There's nothing truly terrible in the track list here, in my opinion. There are just songs on this thing where Roddy's derivative style combined with a lack of topical inspiration catches up with him and makes him sound more average than I know he is. Like the track Boom Boom Boom, which honestly sounds like a leftover from Future's Hendrix record a few years ago. There's also the very ritzy and piano-backed God's Eyes, which does sound pretty for the moment that it lasts, but its brevity makes it one of the most underwritten songs here. Not one of the strongest choruses either. I love a lot of the vocal lines on Big Stepper, but in comparison with every other instrumental on the album, it gets pretty stale pretty fast. This little guitar line that is playing over and over and over really needs something, some kind of change, some kind of extension and addition. It's just not broken up enough. The track High Fashion is essentially a love song about spoiling your significant other with designer clothes. There are lots of references and connections from the quality of the relationship to different designers. Kind of a dynamic that's been explored before, and I don't think Roddy is the wittiest to ever do it. I put ice on you 'cause you got a cold heart. Okay. The mustard beat is not bad though. Really, when this record is at its best is when Roddy is hitting these amazing vocal lines against an inspired beat, like on Perfect Time. Peanut butter seeds came perfect time. Ugh, I love that one. I love the way that that transitions away from these future-esque muttered internal monologues on the verses, the wild escalations into his upper register, which is very Young Thug-esque. In this respect, Roddy is a bit of a vocal chameleon. I just wish he spent that talent chasing after sounds or inflections that were a bit more original to him. There's also the very slick Moonwalkin', where Roddy gets raunchy along with an X-rated verse from Lil Durk. We get a very sensual beat on this one and one braggadocious or erotic bar after another. The features generally on this LP I think are so-so. We have Ty Dolla $ign here, who I think plays it pretty safe, but he does admittedly fit really nicely into the track that he's on, which is essentially about having sex in a car and sounds way more romantic than it should. A Boogie's performance on this thing is way too short to even make a dent, honestly. And even though Gunna doesn't ruin the song Start With Me, which is, I mean, more than enough, he melts so deviously into the song, you might not notice he's there if you're not paying attention. The best feature easily on this thing is Meek Mill on PETA. Gotta hold back that vegan anger on the fur-related bars, but still, it's a great hook, and Meek and Roddy undoubtedly have chemistry. The funny little woodwind melody worked into the beat is pretty fantastic, adds a lot of character, and even though the song may not be as dramatic or as introspective as some of the other ones here that I think are the best, it's still a solid banger. Overall, I like this LP. While Roddy is not the most unique artist out there right now, he is a talented vocalist and performer, and there is a lot of potential in what he's doing too. It's excellent when he's able to plug into a more reflective place and deliver these odes to fame, excess, tough upbringing, drug dealing. While Roddy is most likely going to continue doing whatever is going to generate a hit, as long as he continues to come from a personal place, I think there's going to be reason to pay attention to what he does. Hopefully we also see him last long enough to forge his own style as well. Feeling a strong 6 to a light 7 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Roddy Ricch, forever.